And welcome into the New England Hockey Journal's RinkWise podcast. I'm your host, Evan Marinofsky, joined as always by Patrick Donnelly. Patrick, how are you?
Good. We're entering the best time of year in the hockey season. Also the busiest.
It's nice. It's nice. And it's unfortunate because it's like, it ends quick. I don't know, maybe this is negative of me, but like boys and girls prep playoffs done in a week. A week from now, well, we'll be in the playoffs, but the week after that, we'll be done. And then MIAA playoffs are done by mid-March. And it's the most fun time of the year. I love it. It's like the culmination of everything. And there's so much and a lot of content, obviously. A lot of all the games we watch throughout the year are finally paying off as we make our false predictions. Which is fun, and we'll get into them in this. I was reading in New England Basketball Journal, Ethan Fuller predicted the girls all 5 MIAA brackets.
God bless him.
God bless him is right, and he did them last year, and he gave his numbers out. And you and I did prep last year and actually did really good, and we'll do it again this year.
I was perfect in the Elite Eight.
You were. I remember this. You were perfect in the Elite Eight, and you were perfect on Championship Day, right? I was the opposite.
No, I was one. Championship Day was my worst. I was 1 for 3 on Championship Day. So I have them in my MIAA article that I finished the D1 predictions, and the D2 predictions will be up by the end of today, which is Tuesday when we're recording. But last year, 7 for 7 with the Prep Elite 8, 4 for 5 in the large school tournament, and 3 for 5 in the small school tournament, making 14 for 17 for those keeping score at home.
That's pretty damn good. That's pretty damn good. MIA, I think, is going to be harder. This is our first year tracking them. I think it's harder because there's more matchups. You have more chances at upsets. You'll occasionally have, like a 28 beat a 5 that happened last year. So I don't know. I'm very curious to see how I do. We'll get into my predictions. We'll get into your predictions for the girls MIAA. Why don't we start with prep first? Because we'll get to brackets. There's some bracket stuff up on the website right now. Why don't we start with boys prep? Because I gotta say, I was looking at the projected Elite 8. There's less than a week left in the regular season. I could be wrong, and we'll get into some spoiler instances. I don't see many areas where this changes by next week.
Yeah, the thing with boys prep is it doesn't seem like things can change in the next week, but it has changed a lot over the last 2 weeks to get us to this point. You look at the projected field right now, you have Deerfield 1, Dexter 2. That was a big switch over the weekend. Cushing all the way up to 3, Belmont Hill 4, St. Mark's 5, Brunswick 6, Salisbury 7, Rivers 8. Does Nobles or Holderness, have a last gasp? Maybe KUA, they're probably out of it now, though. What stood out to you over this past weekend?
I mean, definitely we have a new number 1 team. Deerfield moves into, for Dexter. Dexter lost to St. Paul's. They tied Portsmouth Abbey. They lost to Winchendon as well. So tough end of the season for them. Their last game is Holderness this week. And, a loss to Holderness wouldn't knock them out of the Elite 8. I assume it would probably knock them to 3 or 4. But whether they win or lose, they kind of are ending the season on a little bit of a cold spell. Which I didn't see coming. Now, that doesn't take away from the whole year, obviously, but you do want to go into the Elite 8 hot. And there are 3 teams right now in the Elite 8 field who are going in hot, and that's Deerfield, who all season has beaten the good teams, and for a long time was sort of looked at as a spoiler. 9 or 10 in the top 10. And then it was like, well, this is just continuing to happen, and they're continuing to beat these really good teams. And they're old, and they have a great goalie in Elliot Lennon. And it started to hit me in, I think it was like early February, where I was like, wait a minute. They actually are like a top team. They're not a spoiler team. This is a really good team. And they have proven it. And they only have 2 games left, Kent and Westminster. We'll talk about Westminster in a second because they have a real chance to be an Elite 8 spoiler. They're in the playoffs for the large school, or at least they should be. They have a real chance to be a spoiler over this last week. But like Deerfield is hot. Cushing is red hot. I watched them come back and beat Kimball Union on Saturday. Cushing, I did not see coming. Did not see Cushing doing what they have done. They have been red hot in February. They were very up and down in January, but they've beaten some really good teams over the last month. they're starting to hit their stride. And the more I look at Cushing, the more I look at like, all right, they could do some real damage. They're incredible on D. Tommy Blya looked phenomenal Saturday. Ryland Randall, Tyler Russo, Christopher Richards, Oliver Svoboda. They have a really, really, really good D core. 4 of those 5 kids are already committed Division One. Blyle, I think, has a chance to be a draft pick next year. Like, really good players. They control the game. Max Deneen's been red hot up front. He's been scoring a ton. Joseph Kovaluzzi was out on Saturday, but he's been, potential rookie of the year this year. He's an 09. They've gotten score, they don't get a ton of scoring from everywhere else, but enough guys step up that they can win games. Korovic looked a little shaky at the beginning of the game against Kimball Union, but settled in nicely. He has a very high ceiling, really good goalie. Would it shock you if they went deep? If they challenged to be in their 3rd straight Elite Eight championship game? And how ironic would it be if this was the team to win it? Like they
It's
have,
like the
stacked
2018
teams
Capitals.
last year's. Yes, that's the perfect example. Like the team you don't see winning it. Nice story, getting hot at the end of the year though. And what if they're the team to do it? So also phenomenal jerseys, like phenomenal uniforms. I love Cushing's uniforms.
Yes,
but. So they've been red hot. And then the third team that's red hot, and people are going to go, oh, Evan doesn't talk about this team nearly enough. It's Rivers. Rivers is red hot. Rivers is red hot. I think they've won like 11 or 12 straight games. They did need overtime to beat Middlesex the other day. So like little scary moment there for them, but they only have Brooks left. They should be the 8th seed going into the Elite Eight, which I think is phenomenal for them. Getting Deerfield first round is not very fun, but they are hot. So anything can happen. In terms of, I mentioned Westminster. So Westminster this week plays Deerfield and Belmont Hill. Now, a lot, Deerfield losing, they would go to like 2 maybe. Maybe they'd stay at 1. They would still they'd still have home ice for the first round at least. But if Belmont Hill lost to Westminster, Belmont Hill plays Westminster and Tabor this week. Belmont Hill lost to Milton last week. They also beat Nobles, which keeps them high in the JSPR, but Westminster could be a spoiler over this week, and Westminster's good. Jack Fickthorne in net has been outstanding. So I do wonder, could Westminster kind of throw a wrench in things and maybe not knock Belmont Hill out, but knock them down out of home ice? So I think that's an interesting storyline to watch over this coming week of what Westminster, a team who's been really good in the second half. They're projected to be the 7th seed in the large school. They're a nice story. They've gotten production from a lot of places. So I'm curious what they can do over this final week.
And other teams to watch. We talked about Westminster. Holderness, maybe. Does anybody outside of that Elite Eight can they make one final push?
I don't think they can. Now, Holderness is interesting because Holderness plays Dexter this week. And if Holderness could beat Dexter, like Holderness right now is projected to be the 3 seed in the small school. I don't see them moving into the Elite Eight because, again, I would assume for them to get in, and I don't know this for sure. Parents ask me this all the time about JSPR and the algorithm. I don't know the algorithm inside and out. I know it's a math equation. USHR actually just put up a story kind of diagramming it all out that I encourage you to go read. But you would probably need a team like a Rivers to lose to Brooks, or you'd need Salisbury to lose. But I think Salisbury's pretty much in. I mean, Salisbury, they tied Avon Old Farms. They tied Brunswick. They did lose to Westminster, but they have Hotchkiss and Winchendon this week. Both very good teams. They should come out with wins. Brunswick has 1 game left. They play Trinity Pauling. They did just lose 6-1 to Taft. So we mentioned teams that are entering the tournament red hot. Brunswick's entering cold a little bit. I mean, they lost to Cushing 5-0 back on February 12th. They did beat Berkshire and Frederick Gunn, which are big wins. They tied Salisbury. They beat Frederick Gunn again, but then they lost to Taft 6-1. So cold might be, a little harsh, but they're not red hot. They're a little kind of in the middle there, entering the Elite Eight tournament. And so Brunswick, we'll see what they can do. Salisbury always plays good teams close. Always. And that's what, Salisbury's first round matchup right now would be Dexter. Be Dexter. That's an interesting matchup.
Yep.
Like that's an interesting one. Danny Donato used to coach at Salisbury too, so that's always fun. I don't believe, correct, someone can correct me on this. I don't think Dexter's ever beat Salisbury in the playoffs since that coaching switch. I think Dexter has always kind of struggled with Salisbury because I remember
First the
them playing.
Bambino.
That's right. I remember them playing 2 years ago, I think, in the playoffs in the large school tournament. So that's a very interesting matchup. I think Salisbury's a great contender for an upset. That's like, we had him number one to start the year. I firmly believe, it depends on who their matchup is, but it's going to be hard not to pick Salisbury. Even though the scoring outside of Headley and Davis has not been ample, Luciano and Net is solid. They have pretty good D. Good, like Headley and Davis. They have the personnel up front to score. Wouldn't shock me if they were a team that pulled off an upset or two in the postseason. So they're not a sleeper, but I wouldn't want them as a first round opponent.
Yeah. Do you want to hear the JSPR criteria while I have the bylaws up?
Let's hear it.
Okay. JSPR rankings of the top 16 teams will determine who makes the elite tournament. JSPR has 4 categories, and this is from the NEPSKIHA, so the Girls Coaches Association, their bylaws. Category 1, head-to-head results.
Yep.
2, comparison of league RPI, no external teams, affiliates included. So that's on the girls' side. That's your North Yarmouth Academies, your Stansteads, teams that, you might have on your schedule but aren't eligible for NEPSAC playoffs. Category 3, record against mutual opponents. And 4, record against teams under consideration, TUC, based on league RPI comparison. So no external and not including each other. And then the 4 criteria of the JSPR simulation are based as tiebreakers from 1 through 4.
So there you go. There you
So
go.
if you can make sense of that word salad, power to you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you guys want to break that down, you're more than welcome to. I think the Elite Eight matchups, I wouldn't be shocked. These are famous last words. Wouldn't be shocked if they are similar, the ones that we have now. So right now it would be number 1 Deerfield versus number 8 Rivers, number 2 Dexter, and number 7 Salisbury, number 3 Cushing, and number 6 Brunswick. And then here's a great one: number 4 Bell Hill and number 5 St. Mark's. That is like, that, 2 teams that are not far away. That's like a couple of years, 2 years ago, it was Milton and Belmont Hill at Milton. And just great turnout. And I would assume that would be a similar thing. Of those, like if we want it, we'll break the actual matchups down on the girls' side too and boys' side, as it gets when it happens next week. If I was to pick upsets there, like I have a tough time not picking Salisbury in that Dexter matchup, even though I think Dexter has the tools to win it all. Salisbury just scares me. Maybe it's a historic thing too, like not just the team they have now, but sort of what they've done in the past. But Donato's a really good coach too. So like Donato versus Will is a great coaching matchup. Deerfield and Rivers, I would, it'd be hard not to pick Rivers. But Deerfield's been so good against number 1 teams, or not number 1 teams, but like really good teams.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm not confident that's a upset. Brunswick Cushing is really interesting. Brunswick Cushing's interesting. Cushing's really hot. They weren't in the Elite Eight picture at all like 3 weeks ago. Brunswick was the number 1 team for parts of this season and was a top 3 team for most of the year. So they've sort of switched places. If they were stocks, they would sort of be going in different directions. So that would be an interesting one to pick. And then Bell Hill and St. Mark's. I saw them play earlier this year, and St. Mark's won, but Bell Hill kind of controlled play the last 2 periods. So wouldn't shock me if Belmont Hill won that one, but St. Mark's has been really good. So these are gonna be tough matchups to pick, Pat. I don't know, hopefully we can keep the streak going from last year of being really good at picking these.
And it wasn't that long ago where St. Mark's looked like a solidified top 3 team.
Exactly. A couple, 2 weeks ago, St. Mark's is 2 or 3. Dexter's 1, Cushing's out of it. Like, I think it's interesting how it's kind of all played out. And that's why I do think when you can enter the tournament red hot, and this is something we'll get into with MIAA stuff too, like that matters a lot. Like you got to have momentum. Momentum is a thing. I hate when people are like, momentum doesn't exist. It's like, I don't know if you can like quantify it, but I think it does help to enter the playoffs hot and on a win streak and winning games.
I think in a one game, game for the rest of your lives, win or go home situation, momentum matters in one game scenarios. But I think if it's like the Stanley Cup playoffs and you're talking about momentum from game 3 to 4, I don't think that exists. But
What do you mean?
like, I don't know. So like, it's the
Well, I
like,
think momentum's more gradual in the in the Stanley Cup playoffs,
yeah,
where it's
but in
like,
in a series where like doesn't really like when you're getting late and it's um I've backed myself into a corner because I can't really explain it. But like,
I think what you mean to say is like you can kill a team in game 3 and then lose in game 4, and you
yeah,
have the momentum,
yes,
but you still lose. Like
yes.
I know what
There's
you mean.
game to game momentum is very little in a 7 game series. Where like
Correct.
unless it's down 3-0 now all of a sudden. But if it's pretty even back and forth slog, it's
Yes. But I
tough
think
to
in prep
justify.
playoffs and MIA playoffs, momentum does play a factor. I
Yes,
think
in the winner take all scenario.
all that stuff.
Yep.
So boys prep's interesting. I mean, again, the matchups, I don't want to say they're set. I just don't see like Nobles lost to Belmont Hill last week. That really hurt them. Um, Berkshire, do they have what it takes to get back in? Holderness, KUA, I don't know. Now here's the thing. We mentioned this last week. Does the Lakes region playoff get any team in? Because you figured out last week that the USHR projection does not include the Lakes region playoffs. So does a Holderness or KUA by winning the Lakes region playoffs sneak in?
It
I
would have to
the
be with a head-to-head win over the other,
That's the thing.
a quality win.
And it would have to, and you would also have to have like a Rivers lose or a
Yes.
Brunswick lose or a Salisbury lose.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't, so I think the field is kind of not set, but I think we know the teams. I don't see Rivers losing to Brooks. I just don't. Like, and so I just, yeah, that's where we're at with boys prep. So we'll get more next week into like predictions. I won't pick Salisbury next week just to like flip things on its head, like just to be different from what I was saying this week. Girls prep, the Elite Eight picture, it's coming into focus. Uh, it's similar to boys. Seating feels pretty
Yeah,
solid.
the difference is there hasn't been these wild swings in the last few weeks with like a team that was out of it all of a sudden charging in. It's been pretty much the same 8 teams, and like we've talked about, it's been that revolving door at 8, and then 6, 7, 8 playing hot potato with the seeding. Um, but I mean, so Thayer looked like we talked about Thayer quite a bit last week and how tough this finishing stretch would be for them. And all of a sudden they come up with a win over Nobles. Seems like they're pretty safe, but then you see they have, Groton is really the only team left. It feels like that can challenge for, that last spot. So it might just come down to that head-to-head matchup on Wednesday. If Groton wins, and
Oh, they play Thayer. Oh, that's a
yes,
terrific game.
yep, I'm
I
going. I'm very
when you
excited.
mentioned that to me yesterday on Monday, I didn't realize that they were 8 and 9. So okay,
Yeah, so
now
in
I
the
know why you're going.
right now Thayer is 6, but they're projected to finish 8. Groton's been ninth for a while now. And maybe if Thayer loses that game to Nobles, maybe Groton gets in. Um, but that's a massive boost for Thayer. And Nobles doesn't really affect them much. They stay fourth. Andover stayed fifth throughout the weekend. They're in similar spots where they've dropped a game and tied a game in their last 3, and they've also won. So, you know, kind of just interesting ends of seasons for Nobles and Andover. But, it gets interesting again with Cushing, who I think is safely in because of their remaining schedule is pretty favorable. They like a month ago, I would have said, all right, Tilton's going to play spoiler because they were hot at the beginning of January. They've kind of tapered off a little bit. And Choate's in the large school tournament too, I believe. They're eighth in the large school, so they'd be happy to play spoiler. But I think Cushing should handle both of those games, and unless they drop one, Cushing's in, and surrounding factors too. But Cushing's safely in, even though they're ice cold lately. We talked about them a little bit last week. They are
We don't mean in a good way. We don't mean like, oh, they're hitting all their threes and they're not missing any shots. Like it's the other way around.
hashtag icy. No, that Cushing's 4-1 since January 29th. So they're kind of stumbling at the end there, where you look at a team like, a Groton has won 8 of 10, I think, or 9 of 10, something in that ballpark. Talk about playing your best hockey at the right time. Their only loss lately has been to Nobles. They've beaten good teams. Rivers. Lawrence Academy is in the large school. Rivers is in the small school. So you look at Groton, and after Thayer, they have St. Mark's. That's a game they should probably handle, and Thayer has BB&N after Groton. So feasibly, two losable games for Thayer. Not that they're gonna, but those are two good teams. Groton would certainly love to, leapfrog them, and then BB&N's playing for seeding, and they're not. I think they're safely in, unless disaster against Middlesex there and Wilson, excuse me. Um, so that's another one. Say you go.
And they're not favored to win the Williston. Like I'm assuming
No,
the USHR projection has them losing the
no.
Williston.
So if I had to guess, USHR probably has them winning two of those three. So Middlesex and Thayer, because they're projected to finish ahead of Thayer. But say you lose to Thayer and Williston, then it's so it really, like, yeah, it comes down to those head-to-heads, Thayer and BB&N, Thayer and Groton. Um, and Deerfield is Cushing probably slammed the door on Deerfield last week. It was a great game. It was 5-4, I believe, or 4-3. I was there. I should
It
remember
was
the score.
5-4. It was
5-4.
5-4.
Yeah. The guy who was there doesn't remember the score.
I hope I'm right. I remember. I think it was
Um,
5-4.
though there were several lead changes. Looked like Deerfield might have had it after taking the lead early in the third, but Cushing 2-1 answered, or takes the lead, empty netter. Then Deerfield gets back within one. Um, but Deerfield, I mean, unless they pull off something against Loomis and Williston this week, say you sweep the week,
Oh yeah.
then
Then
we're
like
then we're
go
talking
on in.
about them in.
Go on in.
Like
If
just
you can
open
do
the
that,
door, like
please
after
do.
you.
Please go ahead.
Um, but just with that head-to-head loss last week, and their remaining schedule, it doesn't look good for Deerfield. So that's why we're kind of only considering Groton as that next team up, if there is going to be anything happening with shuffling. And then the only other thing of note was Dexter and Loomis playing hot potato with number two. So Dexter lost to New Hampton in overtime last week. Loomis took over number two and then gave it right back with a loss to Williston. And we talked about it yesterday. Williston beat them 4-0
Right.
against the top three team, against the team who, if say Williston wasn't just the boogeyman this year, I think Loomis would be a perfectly viable championship pick. They still are. They're a top three team. They're debatably number two. Um, but just we've said it all year, but what Wilson's been able to do against good teams and just make it look so easy. It's going to be so hard to go against them in any picks, and I don't think I can.
I was gonna say, I feel like they are like on the boys' side. I don't have a team that I'm like they're winning it all. Like I think this is a year where wouldn't shock me, and this is no disrespect to Deerfield or Dexter or any of the top seeds, but this feels like a year where a middle seed or even a lower Elite Eight seed wins the whole thing. Now I could be wrong. Dexter could win it, Deerfield could easily win it, but I don't have a favorite on the boys. I do not have a team that I'm like they're the champs. I don't have one yet. So, but girls, it feels like Williston's turned into that.
Yeah, I mean, last year, like, Nobles was undefeated; they were top of the class. But they, even down the stretch, they had a bunch of ties, and you're like, all right, how much pressure is this undefeated season putting on them? It's kind of on the fritz, but it obviously didn't matter. They had that close call with St. Paul's, and obviously the championship against Williston was fantastic. But they got it done when they went wire to wire. This year, it feels a lot more confident in Williston going in. Um, so I mean, you look at Fair, you have that huge win over Nobles. You might have some huge wins this week, and you get in. All of a sudden, you're the eighth seed, and you have to play against Williston. That's pretty frustrating.
Not
Then,
fun. But
then
you
you
do
look
go in
at
hot. They would go in
That's
pretty
right.
hot. Give
That's
them
right.
that.
Then you got two Dexter versus number seven Cushing. That that's an interesting one. Dexter only beat Cushing 1-0 over the weekend. Um, and it's a similar kind of scenario where, as we talked about with Groton, or Nobles, excuse me, I'm all over the place. But Dexter, like, their undefeated run was kind of on the ropes for a while there, with some ties, some close calls, and then it finally ends last week. So maybe it takes a lot of pressure off them. At the same time, Cushing can come out firing for 6-7 goals at a moment's notice. I'm not sure if Dexter can do that, so that could be some upset watch there. Loomis and BB&N, I'd probably have to give the edge to Loomis. Now, if it was Loomis against, I think when I looked over the weekend, it looked like it could have been Loomis against Thayer. That would have been really interesting. I think Thayer would have the horses to keep up there. And then Nobles and Andover, we saw last week they tied.
I said this is going to feel like a coin flip.
Yeah, it's absolutely a coin flip. Nobles, I think, was up in the third period. Andover came back and tied it. That is absolutely a coin flip.
So there we are. That's where we're at. It's unsettling. Last year, I don't remember for boys feeling like there was a favorite at this point. I mean, Kimball Union was really good. Cushing was really good last year. This year's different. The typical powers, I consider them the four powers: Avon, Salisbury, Cushing, and KUA. KUA and Avon probably are not going to be in. Salisbury will likely be a lower seed. Cushing ends up being the highest seed, which is shocking to me because when I did my boys prep forecast a few weeks ago, they weren't even in the JSPR, and they worked their way in. They worked their way up to being what looks like they're going to have home ice for at least the first round. So it's weird right now. It's odd just how much it's changed, and I think we won't, we'll make our full predictions next week when the brackets release. We'll have video. We'll have our own videos talking about the girls' side and the boys' side and everything. But why don't we get into predictions for MIAA? We have real brackets here. We have real hard brackets. We'll start with boys. So I put mine out on Monday night, and no Framingham in the tournament. Disappointing.
There goes your championship pick.
Could have been it. I should have picked Framingham anyway. That should have been the funny part, like that. The two championship teams. That's like, but Framingham is the actual winner. Not quite. Framingham missed the tournament, which is unfortunate. I could do a whole podcast on that. But I have my predictions out. There's a couple areas I want to focus on. I'm not going to go like matchup by matchup because that just gets, you can go read it if you'd like. But I think Pope Francis has the hardest path. Pope Francis has a very difficult path as a number 1 seed, which usually you don't see as a 1 seed. Pope has to play Wellesley in the first round of 32, which again, they're the 32nd seed, but like Wellesley's still Wellesley. They still have like a good team. Then they have to play the winner of Braintree and Marshfield, which to me is the most interesting of the round of 32 matchups. Braintree and Marshfield, because historically both good. They've kind of struggled this year, especially against good teams. Marshfield has. Braintree's been up and down. So they got to play the winner of that. Then they've got to play the winner of what's likely Xaverian and Reading, which are two really hard teams to play against. So that's just to get out of their side of the bracket. That's to get out of their quadrant. That's not even considering having to potentially play CM or BC High or Archie's or Arlington Catholic. Potentially, those are the higher seeds coming out of the other side, the other quadrant for the Final Four. So Pope has a very hard road. Now, if you've read the story, you know that I have Pope winning the whole thing. I think Pope is number 1. I see them winning. I think the whole like Brian Foley coming back, revenge year. I could absolutely see it. They have the goaltending. They have the offensive depth. They have the defensive depth. I just think they're built for anything. Now, again, it's win or go home. So teenagers are going to be teenagers, and there are going to be games potentially where the higher seed doesn't show up. So maybe that happens to Pope, but I don't see that happening. I see them winning. I see them going through a really hard road to do so. And Pope, they're my champions going into the tournament.
So,
for over 20 years, Eric Nate's Euro Hockey has been helping hockey players of all ages develop their individual skills and improve on all aspects of their game. Through structured drills and innovative training equipment, Eric Nate's Euro Hockey's intense on-ice instruction challenges each student to be the best at their ability. Find a hockey clinic or summer camp that is right for you today at nateshockey.com. That's Nates hockey.com. Eric Nate's Euro Hockey, train to be the best.
Do you want to become a better hockey player this summer with Paul Vincent Hockey? Since 1972, Paul Vincent, currently the head skills instructor of the Florida Panthers, has been developing NHL and college hockey players. Paul Vincent stands by his saying, there's always room for player development. Players such as Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taves, Keith Yandel, Matt Grzelcyk, Patrick Sharp, Adam Oates, and many more have trained with Coach Vincent and his staff and have outstanding results. Join Paul Vincent this summer at one of his 4 Massachusetts locations, Canton, Saugus, Middleton, and Falmouth on Cape Cod. To reserve your spot today, go to pvhockey.com or call 978-807-4070. That's pvhockey.com or call 978-807-4070. Paul Vincent is ready to get back to work this summer. Are you?
Do you want to skate fast? For 50 years, Laura Stam instructors have taught youth players to pros how to skate correctly, powerfully, and fast. Players who attend Laura Stam power skating programs learn how to skate fast by learning how to execute every maneuver in hockey. They become powerful, stable, efficient, and explosively fast skaters. If you can't wait for a clinic, join our subscription skills video service, and we'll show you the skills taught at our clinics in an easy-to-use video format with training plans to guide your training. Register or subscribe now at laurastam.com. That's LauraStamm.com. You can learn to skate fast.
So, chalk, first of all, very chalk. Although I
For
can't,
that, yes,
I
for
can't
that
speak.
side.
We'll get to that in a second. I can't take any shots at chalk. But for the rest of the bracket, what stands out for you? I know you have, St. John's Prep going far as a number 2 seed. You have a little bit of an upset with Belmont in there. CM looks like they're going to stay red hot. What stands out to you with the rest of the bracket?
Yeah, so St. John's Prep, I would have picked to get upset, but I didn't feel any of their potential matchups coming out of that bracket would be what would upset them. Like if SJP had Pope's Road, I would pick against St. John's Prep in one of those matchups. But St. John's Prep will play number 31 Andover first, then the winner of Natick and Weymouth, which again, nice teams. I just don't see them beating St. John's Prep. Then they'll play the winner of potentially, probably Arlington and St. Mary's of Lynn, which again, both good teams. I just don't see them beating St. John's Prep. And so then it's like, all right, now that St. John's Prep's back in the Final Four. So I was like, all right, well, they're right back, right back there.
Ho-hum.
Ho-hum. Hingham part of the bracket's interesting because as you guys know, I am a fan of Belmont. And by fan, I mean, like, I believe in them. I think they really have a roster that can go deep. And I have them going to the championship. I have them upsetting Hingham. I think Hingham is a really good team. Hingham plays LS first. Then they play the winner of St. John, Shrewsbury, and Burlington. Interestingly enough, the St. John, Shrewsbury, and Burlington game is kind of interesting. Interestingly enough, it's interesting. Can you believe that? Can you believe we're paid to talk like this?
Thesaurus.com.
Can you believe it? I would normally pick Burlington here. St. John Shrewsbury's been really up and down and really inconsistent, and they've had some doozy losses, but Daniel Minyalkin's back. Daniel Minyalkin going into the year was like the preseason best player in the MIAA. Now he's coming off injury. I think it's one of his first or second games back. So throwing him into the to the MIAA tournament, like, oh, Daniel, carry us. Maybe, I have them beating Burlington. I just don't see them beating Hingham. Hingham's really good. And then you're likely got Hingham and Belmont. And I was at the Hingham Belmont game in the Ed Burns tournament, and it was a fairly even game, and Belmont won. And Belmont, Hingham dominated the first, and then Hingham dominated, and then Belmont dominated the second, and the third was a little bit back and forth, but Belmont was the better team. I go with Belmont, and I've got them going up against St. John's Prep, and that's where the upset of St. John's Prep happens, and Belmont wins that game. So those are kind of my areas that I'm looking at. The CM side of the bracket's a little bit interesting. I mean, I think we're destined for a CM BC High matchup in that round of 8, which I wrote this is 100% going to be a 1-0 game. CM and BC High, without a doubt, is going to be like 0-0 for most of the game. Probably will need overtime. They'll be there all night, and someone will finally score. And it'll be 1-0 win in like 5 overtimes or something. And I have CM winning that. I think CM's really hot. I think we talked about momentum earlier in this show. I think they have a ton of it. Now, there's the other side of the momentum argument where it's like, are you due for a loss? Like CM has beat a gauntlet of teams the last 6 games of the year, 5 games of the year. So you get CM's got Wachusett, then the winner of Arlington Catholic and Westford, and then probably either BC High or Archie's. So like, you've got that's not easy. So wouldn't shock me if I'm wrong there. But CM's hot. It's hard to pick against them right now.
And then when you get into the semifinals, you made a point last week about Catholic conference teams going head to head, or private schools going head to head, more or less, and kind of goes with your reasoning of picking Pope Francis over a Catholic conference team.
That's exactly what it is. I actually if Reading beats Xaverian in that round of 16 game, which I think could be a really good round of 16 game, I would actually favor Reading over Pope than I would Xaverian over Pope. Like I think because Reading can sit back and they will get outshot 41-16, but they will find a way to win 2-0 with an empty netter. Like that's how publics beat privates usually. And so I think when you mentioned the semifinals, if it was Pope and CM, as I have in my bracket, like this isn't a bad thing. CM has skilled guys. CM has a fast team. They're not gonna, they're likely not gonna pack it in and chip pucks off the glass and just, survive to try to get 1 or 2 goals and win the game and have, the goalie, the 8th grade goalie, Jackson. I also say Jackson Nelson. It's Fleming. I always want to say
Jackson Nelson. The same way as Jackson Nelson, who was on Minnesota.
That's exactly it. That's where the wires get crossed. Jackson Fleming. I'm sorry. And it could, Jackson Fleming could make 40-something saves and they win the game. Like, it could easily happen. But historically it hasn't. So that's why, that's why Winchester gave St. John's Prep a great fight last year. St. John's Prep dominated that game, but it should have been 2-2 going into OT. So that's kind of why I err on the side of the higher the better Catholic conference team, the better private school usually beats other private schools. It's where they run into publics that there's an issue. That's why Belmont and St. John's Prep. I think Belmont's top line and their goalie, that's enough. I'm not saying, I think against Pope that's tough, but against St. John's Prep, I could see them winning that game. That's why I have Belmont beating St. John's Prep. Now, one area that we didn't discuss was Arlington. I have St. Mary's beating Arlington, which I think is unpopular. I think a lot of people would pick Arlington over St. Mary's. Now, let me explain why I have that. Because, it's definitely bulletin board material. John Missouri's probably like, this New England Hockey Journal.
Your face is on the dartboard.
That's right. They're killing me over there in that locker room. St. Mary's has the goaltending. They have depth at scoring. Those are the two things. I think a hot goalie and a high-end goalie can make up for a lot of things. It's sort of like if I always think of a hot goalie in the MIAA tournament as like cheese with a burger that's kind of falling apart. Like the burger, you're like, oh shoot, yeah, it's really, it's like a smash burger. Like, you're trying to put it all together. You put a piece of American cheese on top of it and let it cook, and everything comes together. And that's what a good goalie can do. And I'm not saying St. Mary's is a broken up piece of beef. I'm not saying
really interesting analogy.
I think it's a great one. Genius. But I think a high end goalie like Matthew Smith can do a lot. And I think that gets them over Arlington. And Arlington, I love their high-end talent. I don't think they're that deep. And they're not that old either. They're a young team. So when you combine a young team with not a ton of depth, it's hard to go deep. And they could easily go deep. They could easily. I'm not saying that they aren't going to. I would pick St. Mary's in that matchup. So... And honestly, Arlington was dealt a hard hand with Franklin first. I know Franklin has been started the year brutal. Franklin actually has had a fairly good end of the year. And they should, I mean, going into the year, you would never have picked them to be a 26 seed. They lost a lot of guys, but you'd expect them to be, like 11 or 12. So as a 26 seed, I'm not saying Arlington's going to lose. I'm not saying that, but I think it's a very interesting first round matchup. And it's usually, like I was saying this to Robert Chalmers, because I'm like, that's not an easy matchup. You might think, oh, maybe there's an upset there. And then I stopped myself and I was like, any matchup you think is going to be an upset usually isn't. It's not that one. It's usually, it'll be like friggin' Central Catholic over Xaverian or like Wachusett over CM or something that you don't see coming at all. So that's my little spiel.
All right, last thing on boys MIAA, and I don't think you do see it coming because you picked against them, but you also highlighted number 23 Waltham in your sleeper teams.
I did.
It starts with St. Mary's. We know your thoughts on St. Mary's. So why the belief in Waltham?
It's not a belief. I put that team in my like sleeper teams as like, wouldn't shock me. Wouldn't shock me. Their strength of schedule is low. But they've won a lot of games. And confidence, whether false or real, goes a long way. And anything can happen. And I think if there's any lower seeded team, I didn't pick them obviously, but if there's any lower seeded team that could do some damage, like in the 20s, Waltham wouldn't shock me. Waltham would not shock me. Now the only big upset last year in the first round was Weymouth over, I think it was Archbishop Williams, a 28-5, which is big. It was a 2-0 game. One of the Weymouth assistants I play men's league with. His name's Nicky. He's an awesome guy. And he was like, yeah, we got outplayed and everything. But that's a typical public school beating a private school. That's how you gotta win those games. And I have Weymouth beating Natick in the first round. I'm a Framingham guy. Can't pick Natick. Can't do that. Although I do love Sam Hubbard. I think Sam Hubbard's phenomenal. But I picked Weymouth. So yeah, Pope beating Belmont is my final. So number one. What's funny though is one last thing, Pat, because then we'll get to girls MIAA. We talk a lot about Winchester last year going all the way to the final. We don't talk as much about number 18 Arlington Catholic going to the Final Four last year and being a goal away from being the team that played St. John's Prep at the Garden. I'm very interested to see if there's a team like that this year. Is there a 17? Is there an 18? Is there a 19 seed in that range that makes a real run? Like, I don't know. Waltham wouldn't shock me because they've won a lot of games this year. Weymouth is the 18 seed this year. Marshfield 17. Like, I don't know. In past years, they're usually a much higher seed. Does Marshfield make a little run? I know about that. My Framingham team, my junior year, we went up against Marshfield in like the second round, even though we were a much higher seed, because Marshfield had a bunch of kids get suspended in the middle of the season. They all came back at the end, and what do you know? They kicked our ass. So wouldn't shock me if Marshfield went on a little run. So we'll see. Be an interesting tournament, though. That's for sure. That is for sure. Girls MIAA. I have not seen your brackets. I have them up in front of me. I don't have yours. I have like the bracket up in front of me. We'll start with Division 1. Where are you? Where are you? Like, where are you focused on?
Okay, so I have my picks done in both brackets. I have my thoughts fleshed out for Division 1. Division 2 will kind of just be vibes.
I love that. That's what we want. That's people realize vibes is all you need. You don't need hard analysis. You just need vibes. You just need vibes.
Okay, so I'm looking at. Man, there's a lot of interest here. I'm looking at the North Andover. So the MIAA, it's kind of frustrating because all year we refer to these teams as their co-op names, and then the MIAA bracket comes out and it's just one town name. So North Andover is HPNA, Haverhill, Pentucket, North Andover. So that's a quadrant I'm really focused on. They're the number 4 seed. The Malden Catholic quadrant and the NDA, pretty much every quadrant except Hingham, I think. Hingham, number 1, I have them taking care of Wellesley. I think Arlington as a 17 upsets Shrewsbury as a 16. It's hard to call that an upset though.
Technically it is.
It is technically. But Arlington, they got the goalie, they got the high-powered first line. I think that's enough to get them past Shrewsbury. Not exactly the most high-flying team. I think their kind of magic runs out against Hingham. Belmont takes care of AC, although I wouldn't sleep on Arlington Catholic though. They've given good teams fits. Certainly not and I think Belmont only beat them 1-0 earlier this year. So that's one to watch. I think Belmont gets it done. Reading over Pope. and then I think Reading takes care of Belmont a 9 versus an 8. Um, they've played each other really close this season. It's 3-3 tie and a 4-3 overtime win for Belmont. Um, and Belmont only had one loss this season. It was in the regular season finale, but they did have some trouble closing games down the stretch. I think they were 2-1-2 or 2-1-3 down the stretch. So a lot of ties, a lot of low scoring games. Reading's won 3 in a row. They handed Methuen Tewksbury their first loss of the season in their finale. Momentum. I think the momentum runs out against Hingham. Hingham gets into the Final Four. Um, and then you get into the NDA side of the bracket. Them against Newton North. I don't see them having an issue there. I think Winthrop as an 18 takes care of Bishop Stang as a
I
15.
like that. I
Yeah.
like that pick. I like
Yeah.
that pick.
I think Talia Martucci can just kind of, in that one game scenario can take over. Other than that, I think they're pretty even, although Winthrop has a better differential. Pretty even as far as output. Winthrop's been a little better defensively. NDA should handle them though. NDA is one of the, best structured teams in the state, and Erin Crowell has been awesome in net this season. So they're into the Elite Eight. And then you get Bishop Fien against Needham. I'll give the edge to Bishop Fien. Andover against Lincoln Sudbury. I got Andover. Then that's a little interesting because Andover held their own in a very tough Merrimack Valley conference this year. But Fien's got Chloe Brita on the top line. She's going to Riviere. Just an awesome power forward and another kind of game-breaking type of player. I think that gives them an edge over Andover. But sort of, if anyone's going to stop them, it's going to be NDA. So NDA is into the Final Four as well. Then the Malden Catholic side of the bracket, I had the hardest time with. I think MC takes care of Westford. St. Mary's is playing their best hockey at the right time.
I love this. I forgot that they were a 14 seed and they've been really good recently.
St. Mary's was dead at the Christmas break or, middle of January. They're 7-5-1 to close the season. I think they're even better in their last 2 weeks, like 5-3-1 or something like that. They just beat Hingham in the last game of the regular season. You talk about confidence. You just handed the number one team in the state their first loss in the regular season finale, and you shut them out 2-0. So I think St. Mary's gets past Winchester. I give the edge to MC's experience and depth. I think St. Mary's, it's the top line. They have some steadiness on defense. But I think MC can, their ability to roll 3 lines that can impact, I think gives them an edge. And Meg Malarkey's obviously awesome in net. We've talked about Ava Baker a lot, her clutch gene. We'll be talking about that later. And then Methuen Tewksbury, they'll take care of Central Catholic. Bill Ricca will handle Boston Latin. Then that's really interesting because those are 2 teams that beat up on each other in the same conference. They were really close for part of the season. Bill Ricca kind of fell off heading into that final month, but they're kind of right back in it. They've been pretty hot to close, I think. Methuen beat them 1-0 in both games this season. It's hard to beat a team 3 times.
Both games were 1-0?
Yes. So
Wow.
we harp on it's hard to beat a team 3 times, and I still end up picking Methuen Tewksbury. I think sort of along the lines of an NDA. They're so good defensively, and they've been able to win tight games. They've had a lot of 1-goal wins, a lot of low-scoring wins. I think they can suck Bill Ricca into one of those types of matchups again and come through with it. So I have them there. I have them losing to MC. I just think MC can play any type of game, and their depth will, especially their forward depth, I think will just be way too much for Methuen. And so that leaves us our final 4. Oh no, I didn't get into HPNA. So HPNA, they'll.
Well, you said that's your heart. That was the hardest one you had.
That was the hardest pick to see who goes to the quarterfinals. So, I have the higher seeds winning there: HPNA, Natick, Archies, and Peabody. And then I have Haverhill beating Natick. I have Archies and Peabody was really tough. Peabody's got a short bench. The thing they do have is the goalie. We've talked about Elise Muddy a lot. But Archie's, Kate McLeish is just as good, and they have so much depth. So I give Archie's the edge. And in a playoff game like that, the short bench will probably matter for Peabody. Then that's tough because I highlighted Haverhill in my sleepers. I did that without thinking they'd have to go through Archie's. I didn't really do my research there. Um, I don't know. I think Archie's depth
Well, I don't
is
think when we say sleepers, I don't think we mean like they're gonna win. I think it
yeah.
means like, wouldn't be shocked if they did,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
That's how I
Yep.
look. Like that's how I look at Waltham.
Yeah. So I give, just I'm gonna harp on depth a lot. I give the edge to Archie's with their depth. Goaltending's pretty even, but I'll talk about this with Hingham. I think Archie's has two first lines. And they roll them. They're both effective. They can roll their defense. And Kate McLeish is just as good as any goalie out there. So I got Archie's. So the final four is Hingham and Archie's, and NDA and MC. We talk about Hingham and Archie's having two first lines, both of them. I think Hingham's, like both teams very, very deep. A lot of impact throughout the lineup. I think even if you take away Caroline Doherty, I think Callie Crean and Hannah Lash are still game-breaking talents on that second line. That's why I give Hingham the edge. It's very slight, but I give Hingham the edge. And then MC and NDA was really tough. I went back and forth on this a lot. I go MC.
Ah, I knew it. The
I know, I
vibes won
know.
out. I
So,
love that.
and let me find my reasoning here. Top two private schools in the state, they each had their strength of schedule is equal for the strongest strength of schedule of any team in girls MIAA. NDA only lost to Hingham twice, and Archie's MC only lost to Hingham twice. Both battle tested. I think it's about as even a matchup as you can find. But I think MC's proven they can win those tight games. And, we talked about Ava Baker and that clutch gene she seems to have. That probably comes through again. I'll give MC a really slight edge. So Hingham and MC in the final. Hingham beat them 3-1, beat them 5-4. Hard to beat a team three times. I think they do it. I said MC's pretty deep up front. Hingham's, I think, deeper because their high-end talent is better. I think they have more high-end players in that top six. So that's where I give them the edge.
So Hingham, you have so we both have number one in Division 1 winning.
Yes.
What are you thinking for Division 2?
So look? D2, it's a little more chalk. I got Westwood taking care of their quadrant. I do have Scituate taking care of Leominster in a 17 against the 16. Scituate had a more strength of schedule. So that's also Norwell, Scituate, Abington for the co-op, keeping score at home. And then one big one, Longmeadow.
I was wondering when this was going to come up. Yes.
Longmeadow beats number 6 Auburn, or number 8 Auburn.
I love that. I love
25 beating an 8. We've talked about them. They had the hardest strength of schedule of anyone in D2. Didn't really translate to wins, but they gave a lot of good teams a lot of hard times. I think they can do the same with Auburn.
So you made a great point in your sleeper story when you talked about Longmeadow and how they even the losses to good teams were pretty much all close. And so I said, all right, I need to have this same mindset when I look at the lower seeds in boys. And I looked at Central Catholic because they had a very high strength of schedule and they were like a 25 seed. And I was like, maybe this is my Longmeadow. And then I went and looked at their games and saw they were getting blown out by the good teams. I'm like, all right, well, they're not Longmeadow then. But I love this. You have a 25 beating an 8.
So yeah, Longmeadow beat Peabody. They tied Winthrop. They 1 goal loss to Algonquin, who's a 4 seed. 1 goal loss to Pope Francis, who I think is better than their seed in D1. And a 1-1 tie already with Auburn this year. They gave them a fight already. So I think they can pull off an upset. Maybe it's just the little, the vibe coming through.
No, it's factual.
It is. Then Falmouth takes care of Whitman Hanson. Longmeadow's magic runs out against Falmouth. Westwood takes care of Falmouth. Moving on, you got Tewksbury. I think Tewksbury is running the table in this division. We've talked about my feelings on Tewksbury plenty. I think they're the best team in D2. KP.
I wonder who you picked to win.
I have KP over Canton, Marshfield over Hanover, Sandwich over Melrose. I do have Sandwich beating Marshfield. That's a 10 over a 7. I have Tewksbury, like I said, running the table there. Woburn over Stoneham in the next quadrant. Nauset over Norwood. Milton over Dedham. Plymouth over Dennis, or Plymouth South over Dennis Yarmouth. This is kind of where things start to get a little more interesting in D2. I have Nauset beating Woburn, a 14 over a 3.
Ooh, I like that.
I remember when I made these picks last night, wrote a little bit, and I'm finishing up D2 now, so I'll have some more fleshed out thoughts on that upset, when this is up on the site.
Yeah, go read the story.
Yeah. Milton, I have Milton, beating Dedham, beating Plymouth South. I have them beating Nauset to go to the Final Four as a number 6.
Ooh, I like that. See, that is how those number 6 seeds typically get to the final.
Milton is red hot. They are unbeaten in 14 straight, I believe. And they have their freshman goalie won the job over a senior at the start of the season. They have a good mix up front, a lot of production out of, I think, 2 juniors and a senior. So I like them there. Then Algonquin over Wayland, 4 over 29. Medfield over Hopkinton. Burlington over Beverly. Martha's Vineyard over Pembroke. I thought about Martha's Vineyard a little bit over Burlington, but Burlington's strength of schedule has just been a little better. I'll go Burlington, Algonquin over Medfield, and then I have Burlington, a 5, beating a 4 to go to the Final Four.
So you very much do not have chalk in Division 2, like less.
Half of the bracket's chalk.
Yes, but Division 1, we both have chalk in 3 of the 4 quadrants. You have 2 of the 4 in Division 2 not going chalk.
Correct. Final Four, Westwood number 1 over number 5 Burlington. That's chalk. Number 2 Duxbury over number 6 Milton. That's chalk. So you have a 1 versus 2, and I got Duxbury.
There we go. Not chalk.
So I've seen Duxbury a few times this year. The only time I saw Westwood was against Hingham. And honestly, Westwood really impressed me in that game because, we talked about a lot Westwood's strength of schedule and what do they do against the top team. Well, they gave Hingham hell in that game. And Kate Sullivan, one of the many Kate Sullivans that we cover in NEPSAC and MIAA girls hockey. There's so many of them.
She's everywhere.
She's fantastic. She can be a game breaker. Good blend of a power forward with skill. That top line's really good. Top defense pair is really good. Their goalie played well, even though some of the goals were a little shaky. She played really well overall. But I've got to give the edge to Duxbury. Just, we've harped on depth so much and experience. I think Duxbury is the deepest team in there. On defense, Sammy Norton, Alana Gallagher up front, Meg Carney, Zoe Madigan, Maeve Gallagher, Addie Harrington, Cece Tremonte, like all of it. And both goalies have been good. Corinna Perry's been awesome this year, stepping into that starting role. I think it's a 3-peat for Duxbury.
So they go up again. Yeah. So there are brackets. You can go read our in-depth analysis over at hockeyjournal.com. We have more there, and you can track them throughout. You can, because the games start Tuesday night as we record this. They start tonight.
So our predictions could age very poorly very quickly.
I was gonna say, like, the Longmeadow one I was looking at, that doesn't happen till Wednesday, so that at least has like a couple hours of shelf life. But it starts now, so we'll dive into all that. We'll have more obviously this weekend on the prep tournaments and some videos on YouTube. Make sure to go subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, so you can get notifications when our videos drop, and it just helps us in general, and we appreciate it.
Are you serious about playing your sport in college? Do you need a flexible education that allows you to maintain your practice and competition schedules while also preparing you to succeed at the next level? You should check out the University of Nebraska High School. UNHS is accredited and offers more than 100 online courses, including NCAA-approved courses to protect your academic eligibility. Students could earn a UNHS diploma or take a single course for transfer credit. Courses are college prep, self-paced, and available 24/7, 365. Enroll anytime and take up to a year to complete a course. Visit highschool.nebraska.edu today.
So I say, go top shelf, upper 90s, right under the crossbar. Any questions?
Professor, the NCAA lacrosse championships are coming to Boston. Are we ready?
You prepared to get loud, face paint up, bring boom boom to Beantown? Oh, you're ready. The NCAA D1, D2, and D3 men's and D1 women's lacrosse championships, May 23rd through the 26th in Boston. Buy your seats today at ncaa.com/tickets.
Let's dive into some overtime. Why don't we? Overtime.
So, Evan, why is your solution to everything to put American cheese on it?
Oh, because American cheese fixes all sins.
Yeah,
I learned that. I forget where I heard that, but I heard that somewhere. It's true.
It is in fact true. I just asked ChatGPT, and that's a true fact. Book it. Here's what we're gonna do for overtime today. We all love the drama of hockey. I'm gonna give you 5 broadcasting calls from 5 famous moments in NHL history and recent history as it happens. And I just want you to give him a score, 1 to 10. 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. And hopefully this will be some fun. You guys are more of the puck heads than I am, so I might not know all the players and all these things, but you can probably fill us in. Here's number 1. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see the clip. If you're not, then you'll still be able to enjoy the broadcasting sound, which is kind of the point of the thing. Here is number 1.
Maybe one last gasp here for the Oilers. Bergeron fans on a pass. Steffen steals and he'll ice it. Oh, at least I thought he was gonna until he blew it. That's unbelievable. Here come the Oilers the other way, and Hemsky's loose. Hemsky, he scored! Can you believe what we just saw?
Pretty remarkable moment. That was when do you guys know who the Dallas player was that whiffed on that?
Patrick Steffen, who I think was the 2nd overall pick and was a bust for a second.
He was a high pick, and this was the icing on the cake.
Yes, and Ray Ferraro's color there with Patrick Steffen, you should be ashamed.
Yeah, if we let the play continue, you would hear that.
He was not the 2nd overall pick, Patrick. He was number 1 to the Atlanta Thrashers in 1999. I forgot about that.
Oh, was 2 Alex Day?
No, if it was 99, 2 and 3 were the Sedins.
Oh, that's right.
That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Patrick Steffen, you should be embarrassed for what you just did. That does not belong in the National Hockey League.
I like that Ray's I like that Ray prefaces, you should be embarrassed. He's not already probably very
I know. It wasn't.
It was great though.
It was carelessness, but it wasn't intentionally he wasn't trying to dunk the ball when he should have laid it in, to use a basketball analogy. Anyway, Evan, from 1 to 10, your thoughts on that call? You can include both color and play-by-play men.
That's an 8.9. I mean, they nailed that. And growing up, Pat, I don't know if you felt the same way. I watched that video 1,000 times on YouTube growing up. That was everywhere. I don't know if kids nowadays that comes up on their YouTube recommended, but that was in every not top 10 ever. That was everywhere.
Well, it was just shocking. If it was unclear, he had an empty net. The game was over. All he had to do was put it in the empty net. It wasn't even. He was, and he just kind of stumbled, sort of, or just
the puck jumped over his stick.
Yeah, that's the craziest part, is how the puck just jumped over like that at the last second. Oh my god, that's
he hit a hard piece of ice or something. Or
I don't know.
Does that happen? Is that a thing? All right, Pat, your score.
9.1. I'd probably give it higher if it was a playoff game, but it was only a regular season game, so that was a bummer. But
all right.
It still pops up on Instagram Reels every now and
then. Instagram Reels probably thinks that that happened yesterday.
Yeah.
All right, here's clip
TikTok
number 2.
Doesn't know what it is.
The defenseman all the way up forward, tries to trickle it middle. Subban can't whack it past McQuaid. Lucic, top of the circle. Horton, the drive, score! The Bruins knock out Montreal!
I guess that's pretty much the call from Jack Edwards. Pat, your thoughts on that one?
That's a 10. That's synonymous with my childhood and just the magic that was that cup run. Once, game 5 is kind of the turning point of that series, and the Tim Thomas save, and then the Horton double overtime winner, and then that game 7 just felt like destiny. Mm-hmm. Especially if you go back and watch it, or you think about it, of course they won, and I think it's a great call, and I think it's I think Jack is quoted somewhere as saying like the pause between Bruins and knockout Montreal is because he was seeing spots, which I completely believe.
He thought he was going to pass out.
Yeah, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
It would have been so fitting for Jack too if that happened. Like why didn't we hear the rest of the call and you hear the thud?
The thud.
You know?
Well, they cut up to the booth in the Nessens booth, and you just see Jack go head over heels, legs in the air. Brick's like,
Brick has to finish the call.
Evan, your score?
I don't know if I can give it 10, but Pat's correct. I mean that's like a canon moment in my childhood. I'll give it a 9.4. That's a really
core memory.
9.4.
It is.
All right.
So early in that game 5, his call and the Thomas save on Giunta occupies so much space in my brain. That is one of my favorite moments of that entire playoff run.
I don't have it ready, but if you want,
that was where he had the stick out, right? Like,
no.
the 2-on-1. It was the 2-on-1.
Yeah, and that was the same game Michael Ryder saved a goal too. Yeah, I'll drop it into the chat.
Okay, cool. In the meantime, we'll move on to clip number 3.
Out of the zone. The Colorado Avalanche have won the Stanley Cup. Raymond Bourque, a dream has come true.
Of course, when Raymond Bourque had to go to Colorado to win a Stanley Cup. And I'm not sure who that is on the call. It sounds like Kevin Harlan.
Gary Thorne.
Oh,
Gary
right.
Thorne.
And after 22 years, Raymond Bourque!
Very kept it very simple. Just said Bourque's name, which is kind of I don't know, a pristine, elegant kind of way of doing it. Maybe, I don't know. Evan, you can do this one first. Your thoughts?
I'm debating this because and this is my own personal thing where it's like, everyone around here was rooting for Bourque, which rightfully so. But this was right before Boston became like a city of champs.
Right.
So it was kind of a loser thing to be like, oh yeah, woo! Like he went and won it somewhere else.
I think we had a parade for him in Boston.
You did.
How embarrassing is that?
And a parade for this, which is ridiculous, which would never happen now.
No.
Thank God. But Gary Thorne nailed that. And now the one little tweak, and maybe I'm wrong on this, and I think people would get on me for this, is when the buzzer hit 0, mentioning Bourque there. Is that bigger than the team?
I agree.
Doesn't the cup hoist?
I agree.
That's where he nailed that. So
that was fine. Yeah, but you're right.
Gary Thorne. I would normally give this a 10. I will give this a 9.3 because I'll dox that Ray Bourque part.
Gets marked down for that, Pat.
So I'll give it a 9.0, a round score. I dock it a little more. I agree with everything I've said. I dock it a little more, and this is nobody on the broadcast's fault, but they win. The buzzer sounds, and the song they play in the arena is the Star Wars theme.
Well, they are the stars, right? Is that a thing with them?
The Avalanche.
No, they're the Avalanche.
It's the Avalanche. Oh, you're right. Jeez.
So
team. That was the last clip.
It's not Gary Thorne's fault. It's not.
That's strange.
What channel? It must have been ABC at that point, I guess. It wasn't their fault, but man, that's just such a
the Star Wars theme. Oh,
Evan, I agree.
So 2001.
Evan, I agree with you with the mentioning Bourque straight away as the buzzer sounded, because imagine if you're a Colorado fan. Yeah, of course you love Ray Bourque, but it's his first season there, right? That was his first.
And no, in fairness, he was an active Hall of Famer. Basically, he was a legend, and that was the storyline of that cup. Was him.
He also had Joe Sakic and Rob Blake.
Bingo! That team had other guys,
Right.
other guys who've been there much longer. And I'm not trying to diminish Ray Bourque, but
Patrick
do it
Waugh.
when he hoists the cup. Patrick Waugh is another. Now they had won one in '97, correct? I think the Avalanche had won one with Sakic and all those guys before, which is why I think Sakic had no problem handing the cup off. But still, I digress.
Still. Okay. Clip number 4.
Bring it up to LaFontaine. He gets tripped up, gets it to May, and over the line. He's May going in on goal. He shoots. He scores!
That's a pretty good call. The guy's name's May, of course. So, your thoughts, Pat, on that one?
That's a good one. It's just a bummer. It was against the Bruins.
Right.
That was in the 80s, right? So it's kind of going into that like kind of no man's land of Bruins hockey.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's a good one. And Rick Jeanneret was a classic guy in Buffalo. So
what are you going to give it?
I'll give it a, I don't know, 9.2.
Okay. You always wonder about these things, whether they have them thought up beforehand. But that one, presumably not, because he didn't know May was going to score the winning goal. The Gary Thorne with Bork on the previous clip, he had to have had that in his head. That's how
I would
he was
assume.
What's
funny is
it was probably the entire storyline going into Game 7.
Yeah,
True.
That was Game 7, right?
That was Game 7. Yep.
Yes.
Your thoughts?
I would give the call like a 9.1. It's a great call. And it hits at my big thing with play-by-play people of you get less and less Rick Jeannerets and Jack Edwardses now. You get the polished kid out of Syracuse, or the polished kid out of Northwestern, corporate. And it's not bad, but you don't get a ton of the original, like, just passionate fans of that team who call the game. So Rick Jeanneret was a dying breed, unfortunately, but he was phenomenal.
It's also what we get with the national broadcasts getting so many of the playoff games now.
Also that.
All right. We'll do one more, and then we'll do Pat's bonus clip. Let's go to clip number 5.
The point. Here's Derek Morris. Blocked. Pekka. Outlet pass for Rick Nash. Nash now tries to split the defense and walk in. Nice move. Another nice move. He scores. What a goal. It doesn't get any better than this. Rick Nash, how do you do?
Oh, baby. My goodness gracious. Holy moly.
Nash's third point of the night.
Kind of old-timey call there. Rick Nash, how do you do? Evan, your thoughts on that call?
I'd say, I mean, the call is cool. I give it like an 8.4, but like that era of Coyotes, they were the recipient of that goal, which was Rick Nash dangling every guy on the ice. And then the best one was Ovechkin's on his back, like behind the back in like 06, I think.
Yeah.
It dangled 2 defensemen, goalies down and out, like that. Coyotes, man, the fact that like the most famous moments in that franchise are the goals scored against them pretty much sums it all up for them.
Oh boy, sad. Pat, your score?
Yeah, I never realized that was with less than a minute to go in the third to win the game. I just thought it was some random goal in like the second period. I never looked at the scoreboard. Yeah, it's a fine call. I don't love the color guy. Wow, in the middle of it. That's always a pet peeve. Like it's always a pet peeve of mine a little bit. And I like, you wonder with like, Jim Nance in the booth with Romo.
Yeah,
like blurting out like Jim Nance has to be going crazy about that. Let alone like
play-by-play guys are like very territorial of like, this is my call. Step off.
I saw
when you mean Romo horning in on his job. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is Jim. I can't believe it's Jim. It's foot down, Jim.
Well, so couple, in the wake of the Chiefs loss in the Super Bowl, I watched that Bucs Chiefs game and I watched the Patriots Chiefs AFC Championship. In that Bucs Chiefs game, Romo is talking well into the snap. and Nance has to pick it up mid-play. Like, dude, shut up.
Yeah.
Or like Zolak. And that's more, I mean, it's funnier, but like radio, I'll be listening.
A little more fun with Zolak. I bet Sosi goes crazy about that.
Yeah.
If you listen to the call of Gino Cappelletti and Gil Santos' call of the Patriots' first Super Bowl win, Vinatieri's field goal, it's a great call by Santos. He nails it. It's just classic, old school. And the game is over, and the Patriots are Super Bowl champions. Gino Cappelletti is the whole time is just going, yeah, oh, oh, yeah. Not even saying any words. So funny.
We get a lot of those in NFL radio.
Bingo!
Yeah.
Oh my God!
NFL radio is crazy.
Yeah. But the hometown guys they're fun. They're supposed to be homers.
Yeah.
Right?
There was one. I saw this last night. Actually, it was I think when Virginia won in March Madness, and I think there was some upset along the way or something, and Kevin Hart was doing the call, it was like Stan Van Gundy must have lost his whole life savings on this because of his reaction. But I'm watching it, and Harlan's doing his thing, and then he throws his arms in front of the two color guys.
Yeah.
So
don't
I'm
say
still
anything.
Talking.
I thought he wanted silence. I thought he wanted silence for that moment, but I saw that clip too. I would have been a little annoyed if I were the guys. It's like he's gag order against him.
Well, not to elongate this, but wasn't one of the most famous ones Ken Dryden with Al Michaels, where like Ken Dryden almost talks over the like, "Do you believe in miracles?" thing, but then Ken Dryden knew to like not say anything.
Thank God he didn't. I mean, it is funny that announcers have this moment, like, you know, their World Series moment where, you know, someone hits a ball to you and you either drop it and you're the GOAT, and it's like this moment is coming. And, you know, Al Michaels is the most famous. It's a great line. I don't think he came up with it right there on the spot. I think he had it in his head with at least like a couple minutes remaining in the game, the Miracles line, right?
He must have.
Had to have.
He must.
So that doesn't diminish it. It's still great.
No.
But every once in a while you hear someone who you think, oh, God, he's been thinking about that for 2 weeks, and he just, you know, spit it out. Let's go to Pat. Is this queued up to the appropriate spot here, do we think?
The 11:20 mark. It's a little ahead.
Okay, so good. This is all right, you're going to get an assistant producing credit on this podcast, Pat.
Get to that loose puck, and then Rhino found open space. It bounces over to Marchand. Marchand trucks down to the corner. Spins against Hammerlin. Point touch bomb. Saved by Price. Here comes Gianta. He's got Mullen 2-on-1 against Ferris. Mullen to Gianta. Oh, Tim Thomas goes right to left to steal it. The Bruins ice the puck. Listen to the crowd at TD Garden.
Jack was the best at communicating just how intense a game was. Like, you felt that through the TV.
The crowd pop with his reaction is just one of my favorite calls ever.
Well, I mean, and for casual hockey fans like me, I hate to admit it, you gotta tell me when to get excited sometimes, you know, because hockey moves so fast. For you guys, I'm sure you're picking up all the nuances, but for the casual observer, I love it when they go crazy. You know, you got to pick your spots. Otherwise, you're Gus Johnson and like, and a 3-pointer. Can you believe it? The score's 91-62 now. You know, I mean, like, maybe we shouldn't.
I will say, I think we don't have to pull it up, but my favorite hockey call of all time, or at least of the past like 20 years, was the Devils Rangers played in a game 6. I think it was 2012. Henrique's overtime winner, and Doc Emmerich just nailed the call. And Doc used to be the Devils play-by-play guy before he became a national guy. So like clearly there's an extra passion in it, and you can feel it, and it's incredible. And the sequence leading up to it is phenomenal. And Doc is the best.
Kovalchuk, a shot that's carefully played away by Lundqvist. Now Ponikarovsky with it. Through one in front, block there. Scramble for it there. They poke away at it. Still it's loose. Pumped up by Kovalchuk. They score! It's Reed! It's over!
Now that's how you let a moment breathe.
Gets his puck to the front of the net.
Yeah. So that one, and then the Martinez Stanley Cup winning goal. I remember like where I was for that, and that was such a great call. What I watched a lot of last week in the Four Nations hype was Crosby's golden goal, and Chris Cuthbert's call on the TSN broadcast was so good. But my favorite part of the clip is Crosby yelling for the puck from Iginla. It's like the Iggy heard around the world. Like he yelled for that puck so damn loud, it just echoed throughout the arena, and then he scores immediately. And a great call by Chris.
Well, we'll be taking requests for the next episode of RinkWise. For now, great job on overtime to you both, and back to you, Evan, to wrap things up.
That's right. Long episode today, fellas. Oh boy, long episode.
We gave people their money's worth in overtime.
We hope we did.
That's why it's called overtime.
That's it. But that's RinkWise this week. That's Patrick Donnelly. I'm Evan Marinovsky. We will see you at the rinks.